Just have fun! Hearthstone!
So I heard it's pronounced Hearthstone and not Hearthstone.
Hearth.
Yeah, even though when I look at it, I guess those were in the game. Wait, this made you replay and reinstall World of Warcraft.
I played,
which makes me dislike the game a little bit more.
Are you sure wasn't it not Final Fantasy XIV that made you reinstall World of Warcraft?
No, it definitely wasn't Final Fantasy XIV. I feel like I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV by proxy of living with Mike.
I'm glad it knows, it's like uncynically knows that it's a computer program, and it's fine with that.
I mean, it has the advantage of not trying to adapt a card game that already exists into a digital form, right? It's existing purely as a digital card game, and I think there's a lot of advantages to that. But you talk about Magic. One of my favorite things about Hearthstone is it takes a lot of the micromanagement out of it, which at first sort of sounds like a negative, but I really like, you know, that you don't have to worry about land, right? You're not...
You can't get mana fucked.
You can't get mana fucked,
yeah.
because the way mana is doled out is almost entirely automated. Like, you get one more mana each turn, and, you know, you can each card has a certain mana cost, so you're limited based on what turn you're on, essentially.
It's a weird kind of arms race, I feel like, because each player is kind of playing the same. They do some brilliant stuff, like the coin. The second player gets that extra bit of mana. That's some cool stuff. But it's interesting because, like, later on in the game, you can actually play like your heavy hitters, or you can play a bunch of cards at once, which is something that's can be pretty rare in some other of these games that are resource driven.
Something that I really wanted to bring up about Hearthstone is, you know, you talked about this in your preview. It's very streamlined, right? Like a lot of Blizzard games, but it's almost like deceptively simple. Like the mage, right? Her class ability is if you spend 2 mana, you can do 1 damage to a minion or a player. And I just kind of initially, for some reason, I was like, okay, I'm just going to use it to do a little bit of extra damage in my turn if I have the extra resources. But as you go on and you watch other people, like I've probably been watching more Hearthstone on Twitch, learning things, than I have actually playing it. You can do this really cool thing where you spend the mana to damage a creature that has Enrage.
And then they get plus 3
and you're like, just that little wrinkle. I feel like there's a lot more to the game than I initially thought there was.
But again, it is simple though. Like, have you dealt with you played as a mage? Have you dealt with secrets? It's the only time you can ever affect the other side's board on their turn. And
it's like trap cards, right?
There's not too many secrets though. Like if you're playing against the mage, there's like 3 possible secrets. I think a hunter only has a couple as well. So it leaves
a hunter has
very
few of them.
It leaves and those are actually called traps, right? There's very little kind of mystery, and I mean the simplicity is good because playing interrupts and stuff like that. That's the crazy stuff that's going on in those games, and like that's where things get complicated. And it's, you know, it's kind of balance things out. But it's funny, like the Enrage little trick. That's cute, but I felt like something like if you had played Magic, you remember the Tims? I forget what they were actually called. They were the blue 1/1s that tap to do 1 damage.
Okay.
Like that added so much more to a control deck that blue had. It was so much more of a threat. And I'm not saying that's completely absent here, but it's less of a real driving force than it was in a game like that.
They totally moved that to red though. You know, blue can't do stuff like that anymore.
Well, red always had the kind of direct damage, but there was always that kind of like threat on the table instead of threat in your hand sort of stuff.
The randomness and the luck of the draw, and I feel like, well, it's certainly present. They do a good job limiting it because you only have a 30-card deck, and the way that the cards are constructed in Hearthstone is you can have a maximum of 2 of any single card in a deck. And a lot of times, or at least the way I've been constructing my decks and the way I've been seeing other people construct their decks, is you usually want to have 2 of whatever card you have in your deck, for the most part.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're almost always going to see every card in your deck if you go 10 rounds. So there isn't as much luck of the draw as I initially thought.
Watch your back. You asked for it.
I think the game's fun, and it certainly moves along, and the rules are there to kind of push it. It's nice that you get to, you get to play your big cards, and you don't have to worry about getting mana screwed. I did feel like sometimes when I'm playing it though that I had like very few decisions to make depending on, what turn it was and what I have in my hand. And you get to a point a lot of times where like, okay, I mean, I assume that I will draw a card next time. I have got plenty of mana, so whatever it is, I'll put it into play. And I kind of feel, it moves along quickly, but yeah, I wish, I'm not saying the game doesn't have depth, but to me, like really enjoying Magic, I really like the deck building and the coming up with non-obvious strategies and trying to make the best of like not a great situation. Whereas here, I think sometimes it's like, oh, okay, from how the cards are played, this is kind of the way it's going to go, and I can kind of, like, see into the future of the match and just try to, I don't know.
So
it's okay.
I agree. I agree, and
game.
I disagree, because when I first started playing, the first few hours, I was playing a mage, and I was like, okay, this is how you play a mage. And the way I would play is, I would always put out minions whenever I could. I would always do damage with like damage cards, like do 6 damage to the other player as soon as I could. But instead of being mana screwed, which doesn't happen really in Hearthstone, the problem that you run into is it's very easy to run out of cards.
Yeah, right.
So you get to a point where it's like, okay, I laid out a bunch of stuff this turn, I'm all set, I'm gonna win. And then the other guy casts something where it's like do 2 damage to every creature on the board, and you're like, oh no, it would have been better for me to like test the waters, try to bait a card out of him and hold back, because this next turn I really don't have anything to cast, and he's just completely trumped me.
Not playing a card is like, you're like, well, like, am I just gonna not put something down and the guy will, roll right over you? It's really easy to kill creatures that are annoying you. So you're gonna just be like, boing, where sometimes in Magic you get a guy down and you're like, heh, and the other person's like, what do I do about this card? And it's like, heh, sorry.
I only did it once, but it was fun doing the arena, which is basically a draft.
Right.
It's still a little weird with the whole rule systems. I understand 3 games and you're out, and it seems like an okay investment because you're guaranteed a pack, I guess, even if you win 0 games. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good way to add a little bit of variety. I do see myself playing the game in general when it goes full release. Mm-hmm. But I'm seeing it like some people handle their Spelunky addictions where they do the daily challenge. I may log in and like look if, the quests, where it's like, a lot of them have been like win 2 games or kill like 30 minions or something like that. And I feel like that's like a real like 30-minute investment or something like that. And maybe, like a functional junkie. Like I'll walk away from it.
Junkie.
A talking junkie. A lot of Mr. Show references today.
Okay, I'm really like deck building and Magic, and I feel like there's certainly room to do that, and there are different strategies, there are different ways you can take a class in Hearthstone, but I also kind of feel like the combos and the angles are kind of like obvious, and sometimes you'll hear Magic players, if a set comes out and things look too aligned, they're like, why are you making my combos for me, I want to figure this stuff out. And I kind of feel like in Hearthstone there are a few tricks or, and angles, and they're baked in, and you're like, hey, if you want to go for this kind of approach with this class, you can go for, the thing that amplifies your spell damage, For example, you can go with cards of that, but it's kind of like, that's a thing, and if you want to do that, you'll obviously pick these cards. So I felt like, it's fun to play and pass a bit of time, but I don't know if I'll get back into it unless Ben could somehow convince me to give it a little more. Like I felt like I could see, like, okay, I can see myself like grinding through, getting some more packs, replacing these obviously shitty cards.
It seems like
it
seems like the really fun, weird cards are the super rare ones, and I've seen them played pretty rarely. Like the ones that make the turns go faster, and like I guess there's one card that makes the deck does deck milling, but like most of the battle cries or like death rattles. Yeah, they're not the most.
Well, I kind of felt like I can't make an interesting deck with these low-level cards. There's no way to spin them. They're just kind of weak cards.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, the Magic comparison is a focal point of this talk. And I feel like it's a little bit unfair, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, they're different games.
Magic has been around for a long time and has
the Godfather.
has had a chance to redefine itself numerous times. And I feel like, Hearthstone could certainly use more cards, and I do sort of agree with you. One of my problems with it is because it uses classes, people are like, this is the best class, use this class. And then you see everyone use that. I do think it'll get more nuanced and have more stuff eventually, but right now, it's really good for what it is, and I can only see it getting better, over the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, I mean, for them to Blizzard making a card game and for it to be, good right out of the gate, I think that's certainly something.
Right.
Whether you like the, the little wild bullshit quotes when you click on the dudes who are,
you like the interactive sets.
I've got the funny voice, that shit. Oh, Ryan loves clicking on the fire.
It's great.
Yeah, starting that fire. Yeah.
You think there'll be a real money auction house? No? Did you ever get around to playing Card Fighter Clash on the Neo Geo Pocket Color?
I have played it a little bit, and that's a really good game. The Neo Geo, man. SNK.